The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast.
Pulling a drive, dropped it off to Jalen Smith with the poster on Plumlee.
And I don't care if he's going to get a taunting foul or not. I don't care. I don't care.
Mason Alexander Plumlee, born March 5th, 1990, dutifully gave 9 seasons of service to the National Basketball Association. He is remembered not only as a competent starting big man and crafty elbow playmaker, but also as a loving brother, partner, teammate, and friend. Mason left his own unique imprint on the game of basketball. True fans of the game, real hoopers, will understand and debate the value of his pristine screen setting for years to come. But sadly, it was Jalen Rasheed Smith who recklessly ended Mason's career in one fell swoop on January 2nd, 2022 with a thunderous tomahawk. Mason, for his part, died as he lived, getting dunked on. Our hearts go out to the Plumlee family at this difficult hour, and we respect their request for privacy at this time. Mike, I'm hearing from officials that Jalen Smith has yet to be apprehended, as he is simply too hot to handle. There are also rumors that Ish Smith was lost in battle in an unrelated incident as he bit off more than he could chew. My friend, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I can't... If we scripted this season, I can't imagine a more fun mid-season storyline than is Jalen Smith actually good at basketball in the NBA? Of course, as a center, which we can talk about, but how fun has it been to watch? Even the loss, which against Boston was not fun to watch, really, because of the way it went. But even in that game, the Suns were better every minute that Jalen Smith was on the floor than anyone else, and he's making a real difference. It's really fun. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. He's been remarkable. And last night's game against Charlotte was the most fun Suns game in months, maybe? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in a season that has been obviously so fun for Suns fans in general. Mm-hmm. It's all about expectations. And so, you get into these games in the middle of the season where people are starting to tune it out a little bit. At least, it kind of feels that way because of the overall travesty that the league is in, the kind of overall situation right now. But then to have this, as like you said, as a midseason storyline. I mean, they got to empty the entire bench yesterday. It was a complete blowout, but Jalen is playing meaningful minutes.
He is. Yes, in the last 4 games, 16 points, 10 rebounds, 4.5 free throw attempts a game, shooting almost 90% from the free throw line. The defense comes and goes, but I think it's getting better game by game. As remarkable as the dunk was, which of course we opened the episode talking about, the block on Miles Bridges was almost as remarkable as that, stopping a poster on himself and then delivering one later in the game on his teammate, on Miles Bridges' teammate, is remarkable. To be able to do that is insane. Now, we should say that they didn't... I think that I'll eat crow, right? Because I'll say that I was not sure how good he was. I was not sure if he was going to last in the NBA. I think that we've gotten to a point where he's shown enough that a team is going to be willing, and we'll talk about how and when that would happen, but that a team will be willing to put the time that it takes to develop him because he's shown enough. But I think that I personally underestimated the extent to which playing him out of position as a power forward made it seem like he was not ready to be in the NBA, because at center, which is what he's been playing since JaVale McGee and DeAndre Ayton are out, at center he looks pretty competent. And even when he's playing with the starters, it doesn't look like they're better with him on the floor throughout the entire game. So for me personally, I'll eat crow. I thought he was going to be out of the I thought it was actually pretty close to him either being out of the NBA or getting lucky enough to find a team that was willing to tank next year. I think we're past that. I think that there probably could be a team, if he keeps this up for a few more games, that would be willing to make him their backup center at this point. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think a week ago, the discussion we were thinking about was, can Jalen find a roster spot next year, just anywhere? And now it's more of a discussion of, we'll talk about this more, I guess, in a minute, but there's only so much the Suns could offer him or another team that trades for him could offer him. And now we're talking about kind of, is he hitting the upper limit of that on his next contract offer? Is he a lower tier, mid-level exception guy for some team? Is he intriguing enough to really be a guy you pay several $1 million for, not just give a roster spot to at the end of your bench? And, I agree on the whole power forward center thing too. It was always obvious to us that he would be more effective at center, but I do think we underrated the extent to which we would see that impact so soon. I'm looking at the basketball reference page right here, and it estimates that Jalen spent 73% of his time last season at power forward, and this year only 15%. So this year they're actually playing him at center 85% of the time. Now, what difference has that made? The difference between being mostly a 4, mostly a 5 in the net rating stats, according to Basketball Reference. Last year, Jalen was a minus 3.5 net rating per 100 possessions when he was on the floor. This year, he's a plus 13.
Yeah,
we're still in the small sample size era generally, as he's he hasn't even hit 200 minutes played on the season yet.
Right. And he's playing with Chris Paul and Devin Booker.
He's playing with Chris Paul and Devin Booker.
Massive effects on the net rating as well.
Like right now, that net rating of plus 13 would literally imply that the Suns are playing better with Jalen than they have for stretches with like DeAndre Ayton, for example, and that's not going to hold. It's not going to hold throughout a full season. But the point is, he looked like a negative as a power forward, and now he looks like a positive as a center, and it really is that simple. There are times when you really watch like how he plays on defense, how he moves. He's a guy who has all the kind of youthful athleticism that you might want to see out of a guy. He runs the floor just really, really well. The other block that he had last night, that wasn't the initial one on Miles Bridges, but another one that he got, I think it was on Terry Rozier, was kind of coming out of the open floor, was also really impressive. He just surveyed the floor really well in transition. However, you can still see when the Suns are in their half-court defense, he's moving a step slower than every other big man on the Suns roster, just in terms of reaction time. You can see that they're really, Chris Paul or other players on the team really have to focus on coaching him a little bit more on where to be. He's just a young big. And so there are questions about, well, okay, these were the Charlotte Hornets. If you actually put him against good teams, could he hold up in the playoffs? And frankly, I still at this point sort of suspect that the answer is no. But that is in no way an indictment on Jalen Smith, like his future. I think he's demonstrated this week that absolutely, if you play him at the 5 and put him under the right training program and make sure he gains enough weight in the weight room and all that, he should be fine. He should be fine. He absolutely has the skill set, I think, to put together a decent NBA career. You just got to play him at the right position. Right.
And even if he, look, as a starting center, he's outpaced by most centers in the NBA. We saw the difference already between Steven Adams just bullying him and just getting every offensive rebound available if Jalen Smith was on the floor, and then Charlotte, who has like a clear lack of center, whether Mason Plumlee is kind of good. Like he's fine. He's not a great center. He's not super strong, not super skilled. And then they really don't play a backup. So they play power forwards at kind of like the Suns did last year. They play power forwards at backup centers. So it's an advantage to him there as well. And, we saw the difference there. It is it's this whole thing. Well, first of all, I'm going to say this. As much as I want to give James Jones credit for what we've seen so far, because now I'm like, well, he's actually kind of good. That, credit to James Jones for figuring that out. We should also mention he drafted a center to a team that had no minutes at center. And that's a bad thing. That's really bad, because clearly he could have developed into something, and he can still develop into something. And the Suns put him in a position that in some ways probably stunted his development overall. Now, of course, when he steps into that position, he's able to play what is going to likely be his natural position in the NBA, which is a center position with somebody like Chris Paul on the floor and Devin Booker on the floor. Yes, it's working, But now, once this team gets back to full health, I mean, what do they do with him? And I think this is the toughest part of this conversation, because as fun as it's been to watch Jalen Smith, you have to ask, as a Suns fan, whether or not we're going to see his development play out. And it doesn't seem like there. For one, they didn't pick up his third-year option. So already he's a free agent at the end of this season. And we still have DeAndre Ayton coming back, JaVale McGee coming back, potentially Frank Kaminsky coming back, potentially Dario Saric coming back. That's 4 centers that will likely be ahead of him in the rotation this season, with him being unsigned next season. So the question at this point is, what do they do? And, they have some options, but I imagine that's been going through your head watching this as well.
Well, of course. The only way there are still going to be minutes for Jalen available after JaVale comes back, after Frank comes back, even after Dario comes back, is, and Eddie Johnson posited this on the broadcast yesterday. He said, well, I wonder if he can play next to Ayton. So there are obviously still people holding out hope that he can play power forward, because that's the only way you find minutes for this guy on this team. Now, unfortunately, I'm pretty bearish on the ability for that to happen. I mean, Jalen was advertised to us as a shooter. If he was shooting 35 or 40% from deep, maybe it would sort of change my feelings about it. I still think there are other issues outside of that, but the fact of the matter is, so far, he's a 19% three-point shooter through his career. I think, there's nothing there, really, to build on. There's no foundation that you can build between having that guy next to DeAndre Ayton in terms of spacing. It's not a workable combo at this stage, especially when you're talking about not a team that just has playoff aspirations, but a team that has championship aspirations. There's a higher expectation that you're setting. And then even outside of that, there's other things too, right? Like, I feel like maybe I don't even have to go over this, but we've never really seen Jalen make plays for others, right? Like, if you're gonna play power forward at the NBA level, it's one thing to be a center at the NBA level who's just a finisher. And in fact, I've been really impressed with some of the ways that Jalen himself has operated in the short roll. You talked about how he's averaging 4.5 free throw attempts per game this week, and a lot of that is because he's not afraid to collect those passes when they trap Chris Paul and then dribble the ball and get himself a bucket. That's great. But as a center, you're allowed to do that and not pass the ball most of the time. As a power forward,
do you want to guess how many assists he has in the last 4 games total?
Well, 0. He has 0.
He has 0 assists in the last 4 games.
And as a center, that's okay. It's workable. But he has 6 assists in his entire career. It comes out to about half an assist per 36 minutes. That's not a power forward in the NBA. It's just, and when you consider that most of those minutes were played at power forward, or at least half of those minutes were played at power forward from last year, and he still has 6 assists in his entire career. Granted, a lot of that was garbage time, but even so, you can't be a power forward and average half an assist per 36 minutes, especially if you want to play in the Suns scheme, which emphasizes so much ball movement. That doesn't mean you have to be Thad Young. You don't have to be dishing him out 4, 5, 6 a game, whatever. But you need to make a play for others if you're going to play the power forward position in the NBA in 2022. And I'm not really confident in Jalen's ability to do that. And especially if you're going to stick him next to Ayton, who also is not like a high assist big. Mm-hmm. Just doesn't really feel like it makes any sense.
Especially if neither of them can space the floor, which kind of remains to be seen with Jalen Smith. 2 for 8 from 3 in the 4 games that he's been starting, basically. But 88.9% from the free throw line, that shows something. It's 16 for 18. It's still a relatively small sample size, but it means that the shot's not broken. I think you can look at what he's doing right now and say the shot's not broken. Whether or not he can extend that shot out to the 3-point line, I think, is probably not a this season thing. That's something that's going to take years of development to find out.
The free throw stuff is tangible and it's real for him. The rim running stuff has always been tangible and real for him. I think we've known that. But so now he's put together a few good games in a row. So where do we go next with Jalen Smith? Well, I think his career is at a fork in the road. His ability to take the next step and really be like a good center in the NBA. And by good, I even just mean maybe he could start one day, not being an all-star center or anything. We're keeping the expectations low for now. His ability to be a good backup center / fringe starter hinges on Either he's going to get 20 pounds heavier in the next 2 years, and he really just has to focus on his body, and that's going to shore up a lot of the issues that he has going against guys like Steven Adams, where now he can hold his own. Or, and ideally he does both, right? Or the other technical path is he commits really to the stretch five philosophy, and he becomes a 35 to 40% three-point shooter that people were hoping he could be. And if he can do that, then yeah, maybe he can play some minutes at the 4 too. I still think the 5 would be his natural position in that case. But that's how you start to see a path for Jalen going forward. But either direction is still very much a risky proposition. And so that's why I think now, as we get into the conversation of okay, so this guy's had a good week. How do teams actually value this?
Right.
I do think some Suns fans have been going a little bit overboard with. I don't think other teams are going to look at this week from, because if you look at just kind of guy like Kevin Love averaged 30 points per game this week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you look at the NBA right now and the state that it's in, there are a lot of fun stories around the league. But at the end of the day, if the Suns aren't going to find any time for Jalen when DeAndre comes back, which should be within a week or two, and all we're going to have to point at is this 5 to 10 game stretch of good play from him, which will be great, but that's like all he's going to have this year.
Yeah. That's
not enough for teams to look at this guy in the offseason and say, oh, yeah, Jalen Smith played really great for a 7-game stretch in January. I'm going to give him an offer sheet worth $7 million a year. No one's going to do that. No one's going to do that. Now,
I mean, I think we kind of had a bit of a wake-up call as far as the way that general managers value small sample sizes with Cameron Payne, who we expected to be signed to a lot more than he ended up signing. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, I bring up this guy all the time now, but like I gushed about Jared Vanderbilt or whatever with what he did in Minnesota last year. I really thought that was a guy who's going to like sign a lucrative in the sense that it would be like, you know, a $6-7 million offer sheet, something like that. He could barely get his contract process dragged out deep into the offseason. He could barely get 4, and he played the full season, not a 10-game stretch. So I think we're talking about Jalen's going to get interest from NBA teams, mostly bad to mediocre teams who have the time to really invest in his development. But we're talking about that ceiling. The Suns can only offer him up to, I think, $4.7 million is the figure. That
4.67.
4.67. Thank you. 4.67 is the ceiling because the Suns declined his offer. That is the most that they can offer for the start of a new contract, a theoretical new contract next season, that either the Suns or, critically, any other team that trades for Jalen Smith this season can offer him. Other teams can offer more.
Yeah, so just to quickly reiterate that, Jalen Smith is technically an unrestricted free agent this year. Now, $4.67 million, I know that some people might be surprised to hear this right away, but that would be an overpay for him based on what we've seen so far from Jalen Smith. Regardless of if you blame him or you blame the Suns, that's the way general managers operate. But because the Suns declined his third-year option, if the Suns were to re-sign him, they cannot, based on the CBA, offer him more than $4.67 million. And like Sam said, that includes any team that trades for him, which we have to talk about the prospect of him raising his trade value in this last few weeks. Now, whether that be, I think when you talk about somebody like him raising his trade value, really you're talking about to teams like OKC, Orlando, maybe New Orleans. I don't know. New Orleans is creeping up a little bit in the standings. Maybe Sacramento, if these teams start to pivot and try to tank and maybe are more willing to invest in young players is a better way to put it. But those are the teams that you're talking about at this point.
For sure.
If Suns fans are thinking, okay, say they don't trade him, because as I've talked about on previous last few episodes, I personally think the trade deadline is going to be almost nothing this year. I think teams are convinced that they have an opportunity to make the playoffs, and maybe Terrence Ross is available or somebody like that. But I don't know that it's going to be a lot of major moves in this trade deadline. So say the Suns do end up keeping Smith and just keeping the team intact to the way it is, I don't think there's a massive risk of a team swooping in and offering him more than $4.67 million to start next year. So if you're worried about that, I would say don't really worry about that. But that does not necessarily mean that the Suns are in what could be considered a good position here. Like, say they do, maybe if they do end up trading Dario Saric, at the trade deadline. That clears up some space for Jalen Smith to earn minutes in the future. But like I just don't know exactly. To me, I think the Suns are going to try to trade Jalen Smith at the trade deadline, I guess is what I'm getting to. Even if he's playing well so far, because they don't have him under contract next season, and they clearly value veteran players to be able to play in the playoffs more than young players, even if they have upside so far. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree with that. And I also just want to say Jalen is the first top 10 pick to have his third-year option declined since Joe Alexander in, I think it was 2009. So what I mean by that is I think there's a good chance that we get to this contract process, and yes, there's not a ton of risk of other teams offering Jalen more than the $4.6 million or whatever, but let's say he gets 4 different teams that offer him all $4 million a year, and the Suns are one of those teams. I would not surprise me if he's, more than happy to sort of disavow himself of Phoenix at this point and go somewhere else where he feels like he's being properly invested in. Mm-hmm. So, the Suns have no leg up in terms of he's an unrestricted free agent, as you said, so they can't match an offer sheet. I think when you look at those factors together, it makes it all the more likely that, yes, they're going to go for a trade.
Yeah. And, if the Suns end up trading Dario Saric, even Frank Kaminsky, I guess, could be traded. He doesn't have much of a contract to be moved, but he's played well enough that maybe a team values him. And somehow there is space, minutes for Jalen Smith next season. He could do something because the Suns are set up in a way. And I do want to make this point. The Suns are set up in a way that centers, if they just give a lot of effort and listen to the coaches, can succeed here. We have Chris Paul. We have Devin Booker. That leads to a lot of space at the rim because of the way they draw big man defenders to the mid-range. That leaves a lot of space at the rim for somebody like Jalen Smith, DeAndre Ayton, JaVale McGee, Frank Kaminsky, Dario Saric. All of them have succeeded on this team. And if Jalen Smith wants to sort of bet on himself next year, he could sign something like a 2-year minimum contract with a player option in the second year and try to play on a team that could maximize his skills and work to earn another contract somewhere else in the future. Whereas if Jalen Smith went to Houston, for example, I don't know that the type of spacing is going to be there for him to succeed. It's going to be a lot harder. He'll get more attempts up, but to prove that he could be valuable to a winning team would be a little tougher on a team that's just losing a lot.
Not to mention, I don't think you could pick a more jarring example right now in the NBA of Jalen coming in to play his first 2 years with Phoenix and then going to Houston. Like locker room wise, he would feel that contrast.
Right,
it would be a different culture for sure. You look at that team right now.
Yeah, so it's going to be really fascinating to see. But like once again, credit to him because you talked about it earlier. He doesn't always know where to be on the floor, especially defensively. But the effort is always there. Like at every moment, he's going 110% at every single moment. And you gotta love when you see a young player get an opportunity like that. It's kind of Rashawn Holmes-esque, where like when Rashawn Holmes was on the floor, he was going at whoever was on the floor. And Jalen Smith, basically, this is almost like his rookie year, really. Like he's finally getting minutes for the first time, going up and just challenging, whether it be Miles Bridges on defense or just dunking on Mason Plumlee on offense. You got to give credit to him for doing something like that. It's been really fun to watch, and it's going to be fascinating to watch his career. All of this, to me, has come with the sort of realization that, we're probably not going to be the fans that are watching every game he plays going forward, because there's a good chance that he ends up on a different team as early as a few months from now.
Right.
So that sucks. But do you have any other thoughts on Jalen Smith? And then let's talk about something else here.
Nope. I think we can move on.
The Suns also signed to a 10-day contract. This came from Woj. Bismack Biyombo. And Woj teased the possibility of Bismack staying around for the rest of the season if he's able to earn a roster spot, which once again gives you some indication that the Suns may want some sort of veteran at that center position. Bismack is somebody that we brought up right when Frank Kaminsky got injured. You remember live on the podcast. I'm not sure if it was a regular Patreon one, but I brought up the list of available free agents, and he was one that we brought up, and we questioned where he's been. Well, now he's here. He signed to the Suns. He steps on the court, and he looks huge immediately compared to guys like Emmanuel Terry, or even Jalen Smith. And he played pretty well considering he's been with the team for what? He was with the team for a day.
A day at most, yep.
And then he stepped in, against Charlotte and played pretty well. I was kind of impressed with Biyombo. What did you think?
I was definitely impressed. There were highs and lows to his game. A little bit of awkwardness in his game. I think at one point he tried a hook shot, which was like kind of funny and, was posted to Twitter as well. He's going to have his fair share of lowlights as a player who has never been an extraordinary offensive talent in his 10 years in the NBA. Let's just put it like that. But he absolutely showed a dedication to the game, like he truly wanted to be there. And I think that's, as you were just talking about how important it was to have that in Jalen Smith, Bismack's a guy who's not going to take this opportunity for granted in the NBA. Actually, he had a really kind of touching post-game presser with the media where he talked about how this was the first NBA game he had played since he lost his dad in the summer, and how he didn't really feel mentally ready to jump back into the NBA. You remember on that episode a few weeks ago, we were kind of asking, I don't think we were super excited about the prospect of Biyombo at the time, but we were asking, like, where is he?
Yeah.
You would expect he would be one of the guys who's first to come off this list as teams start to need other additional depth pieces. Well, it turns out, it's entirely possible, at least, that he just wasn't mentally ready to join the NBA, not at least initially this season. But he kept himself ready. He kept his body in shape. And when the Suns called him, he was there to answer the call. So, I thought Bismack was impressive. I think at the end of the day, I certainly don't mind if the Suns want to extend him at least another 10-day contract, and then if you want to explore the possibility of signing him to a full deal after that, that's fine. Although I would just wait and see him play a few games first, but also just understanding he's going to be the 4th or 5th center in the depth chart, right? So it's a good story. He's a humble guy who's easy to root for. How he finds minutes over JaVale McGee and Dario Saric and Frank Kaminsky, unless literally all three of them are all out at the same time.
Which is happening right now, yeah.
It's happening right now, but it doesn't, again, just like with Jalen, it seems like this is a fun story for the next 1 or 2 weeks. After that, he's a nice, break glass in case of emergency type case, but, that's all this really is.
Yeah, he's in the mold of DeAndre Ayton and JaVale McGee, in that he doesn't bring like a lot of extra excised versatility from that position the way Frank Kaminsky and Dario Saric would. So he is sort of, if one of those two guys gets injured and the Suns need a player like that, that's when Biyombo would play. And I think that's valuable to have because Frank Kaminsky, we don't really know when he's coming back. We'll see what happens with that. And if he comes back, maybe he's going to need time to play like he was. And somebody like Biyombo could step in and play those extra minutes. Or if JaVale McGee or DeAndre Ayton gets in foul trouble, you have another guy to do that there. But, it does sort of highlight the fact that if Biyombo ends up staying, at least for the rest of the season, the Suns could enter the trade deadline with this group of centers. We'll just say it right now. DeAndre Ayton, JaVale McGee, Bismack Biyombo, Frank Kaminsky, Dario Saric, and Jalen Smith. That's 6. That's 6 centers, which is not a smart use of roster spots, considering, for one, you can't even play 2 of those guys at once.
No, there's no combination of 2 guys in there that you feel comfortable playing at the same time. Not well, at least. Maybe Dario can play a little power forward. But
yeah, Dario and Frank played together well in the bubble. That was the last time we've seen, because they're both versatile enough that maybe you could get away with that for short stints. But outside of that, and even that included, I don't think that you could feel confident playing any group of those 2 guys. So the Suns are one. If they do that, they lose some. It's tough to negotiate trades when teams know that you have a dearth of guys at a single position. They understand the position you're in, and they're going to try to take advantage of you. So that makes it a little tougher. And 2, they probably do have to either get rid of some guys. Maybe that means cut or maybe that means trade by that trade deadline. So it's a little early to be having the Bismarck. They probably wanted to explore these options a little closer to the deadline. But just so those who don't understand this know, the Suns can sign him to a 10-day, and then they can sign him to another 10-day, and then they can't. After that second 10-day, they either have to sign him for the rest of the season, or he's gone. They can't just keep signing guys to 10 days until the end of time here. So they have to make a decision in the next, at this point, 18 days. Basically, we got to find out what they're going to do with him. So that puts him in an interesting position. It's definitely something to watch here. Do you have anything else on Biyombo before we take a break and get to some resolutions?
Let's get to some resolutions.
All right, we'll be right back. When we come back, we're going to talk about some resolutions for the Phoenix Suns. All right, first of all, Happy New Year to anyone listening to this. Real quick, before we get to some resolutions, I'll just say thank you guys. This last year was a blast. On this podcast, we got to cover our very first playoffs, our very first NBA Finals. We did a ton of episodes. We did live playback watch parties with you guys and lots of other stuff, including live shows on Twitter and YouTube, all kinds of great stuff in the last year. Thank you to everyone who listened to this podcast and supported us in the last year. I hope you have a great 2022. But because it is New Year, we had to do some sort of cliche segment here, and that means that we each chose a few New Year resolutions for the Phoenix Suns. We did not talk about them with each other ahead of time, and we're just going to go back and forth and give just a few of them real quick. Sam, I'd like to hear what your first New Year resolution is for the Phoenix Suns.
Sure thing. So mine are about the Phoenix Suns. They're really just individual New Year's resolutions for guys. It's not kind of team-oriented stuff. I don't know if that's the direction you took it in.
Yeah, I did kind of both.
Okay. My first one, and I was just joking with you during the break that you're going to think that mine are super stereotypical of me, so this first one is super stereotypical of me. But Mikal Bridges, shoot the basketball. And that's all I wrote. That's all I wrote on my outline. I don't have a stat for this one. It's just Mikal Bridges, your New Year's resolution is to shoot the basketball because we know you're capable of it. We know you have the mid-range shot. We know you have the three. We know you can finish. Cam Johnson just had the month of his life. And by the way, I feel like we should point out, since the last episode, we talked about how good one of your New Year's resolutions isn't about Cam Johnson, is it?
It is. There's one.
Okay. Then I will save that. But the point is, there are other guys on this court. Other guys on this team who are seizing the opportunity. Mikal Bridges seized the opportunity because it's there for you, and I want nothing more than to see you reach your potential, your offensive potential that we know you have. Our buddy David Mike shared with us last night a stat that surprised me, but it didn't surprise me, which is Mikal, I think, was one of the underrated storylines of last night's game against the Hornets, in that he calmly, collectedly pulled up into 2 easy threes throughout the game. And so David shared a stat with us that he is 8 for 12 on pull-up threes now this season. It is something that we scarcely see out of Mikal Bridges, but a 67% rate on pull-up threes is not too shabby. So, Mikal Bridges, please just shoot the basketball. We know you're pretty good at it. I hope that you understand that you're pretty good at it too.
Right. Yeah, it's been kind of an interesting thing. I do think that, first of all, let me ask you, who do you think he's taking those shots from? Because I think part of the reason it's tough to find Mikal more shots is that the offense is in such steady hands when Chris Paul and Devin Booker are on the court that it rarely goes over to Mikal Bridges to create his own offense, whether that be with a screen or in isolation. Isolation, he's not very good yet, which affects him. And, when you're running a screenplay, like some sort of pick and roll, you kind of need Devin Booker or Chris Paul to be on the ball because there's likely something good that's going to happen at the end of that play.
No, it's totally fair. And it's a good point also in noting that he plays the vast majority of his minutes. He plays so many minutes in general, but he plays the vast majority of those minutes with Booker and Paul. Paul has been so pass first this season that I don't think you could possibly ask him to take any fewer shots.
Right.
That's like an absurd premise. Devin Booker, there's no point in asking him to take fewer shots as the leading scorer on this team. Ayton, I finally like to see the fact that he's taking a few more shots. So I think maybe the answer is in rotations. You look at, are there a few extra minutes that you could play Mikal Bridges with Cam Payne, and in doing so could ask Cam Payne to funnel the offense through Mikal Bridges? Because I think if there's any guy if there are any two guys on this team who sometimes play really well, and by the way, Cam Payne, I will point out, is another guy who we kind of ragged on a little bit in the past week, and he woke up this week. He had a good week of basketball for the Suns. But if there are any two guys on this team who I instantly think of are maybe taking more than their weight of shots, more than what you would think would be proportional in the offense, it's probably those guys off the bench, Cam Payne and JaVale McGee. So if Mikal Bridges plays more minutes with the second unit, it forces him into a position similar to Cam Johnson a little bit, up until Jay Crowder went on protocols, but it forces him into a position where he has to seize more opportunities on offense. Now, would he actually do it? I'm a little skeptical at this point, but I also, I didn't prepare for this segment by I didn't look at what the numbers say with Mikal playing with Cam. I can go and research that after the episode, but I just don't know what those say this year. Yeah,
I think just Cameron Johnson, which we'll talk about in a minute, but his ability to shoot so quickly means that he's just willing to take those shots, and I think, we'll talk about that in a minute, though. But I think with Mikal, it'd be nice if he were to seize that a little bit more. Let's just look at in the last 4 games, just out of curiosity. So since DeAndre Ayton went out with COVID and Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges is averaging 10 points on 8.5 field goal attempts. So he is actually shooting a good amount, 50%. This is crazy. This is so crazy with him. 50% from the field, 46% from 3, 0 free throw attempts in that time.
But 8.5 field goal attempts in 30 minutes is that's not an increase at all. So
it's less than Jalen Smith,
The Suns lost. I mean, Jay Crowder's not really a high usage guy either. You know what I mean? But offense is
he's
offense.
willing to shoot.
Offense is offense. The Suns
if Mikal Bridges was out, Jay Crowder would have 14 shots a game.
100%. and so that right there is the Suns losing 3 of their guys in the rotation who take the most shots, 2 bigs and a power forward. And you're telling me Mikal's not taking any extra shots in the offense? All of the extra shots are going to Cam Johnson instead. All of them are going to Landry Shamet. Come on.
Yeah.
There's room for him here to assert himself.
Yep.
And he's not doing it.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I do think that with the pull-up 3-point stats, actually, you know what? Let me go over my first one here because it's sort of relevant to that. And first of all, Eddie Johnson, if you're listening, turn off the podcast right now. You're not going to enjoy my 2 resolutions for the Phoenix Suns. They're antithetical to everything you believe about modern basketball. But in Charlotte, the Suns were playing at an insanely fast pace. They're still top 3 in pace for all teams so far this season. But something that stood out to me that they were doing in this game in particular is shooting threes incredibly early in the shot clock. That means running in transition, and if the 3 is open, they're getting that 3 up really quickly. And it's something you can do especially well when Cameron Johnson is on the floor because Cameron Johnson can sprint into that 3. But also, the pull-up 3-point attempts that you're describing with Mikal Bridges, he's not doing those off of crossovers. Right, he's not doing those around screens. He's doing those when the Suns are running full speed in transition and the defense is backpedaling, and he hits one hard dribble, stops at the 3-point line, and shoots with them 10 feet away from him. Wide open shots. And that means that in order to get more of those shots, they need to shoot more threes in transition. Statistically, a 3-point shot in transition is one of the best shots in basketball because, one, teams tend to play defense at the rim, right? If the rim is open, you should shoot at the rim. You should get a dunk. You should get a layup. But if teams are backpedaling in transition and that 3 is open for a brief second, that is an incredibly valuable shot in the NBA. And let me read to you some stats here. I looked up the Suns by shot clock range So this is very early. This is considered very early by the NBA standards, and this is 18 to 22 seconds left on the shot clock. Cameron Johnson shoots 42% in that time. Mikal Bridges shoots 42% in that time.
These are threes, right?
From 3 this season.
Okay.
42% Cameron Johnson, Mikal Bridges 42%, Cameron Payne 40%, Devin Booker 40.8%, Landry Shamet 40%. So this is 18 to 22 seconds left on the shot clock.
Wow.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys shooting over 40% in that time because the shots are open. These are all very good shooters as well. And this is, a small sample size, but not really. Like Cameron Johnson has taken 33, Mikal Bridges has taken 22, Cameron Payne 22. I'm sorry, Mikal Bridges 26. Devin Booker's taken almost 50, and he's shooting 40% on him, 49 so far. Landry Shamet 35. And then I went a little further. I looked in the 15 to 18 seconds left in the shot clock range, and these guys are shooting well too, still. Mikal Bridges, 12 of 24, 50%. Frank Kaminsky, 75%. I know that doesn't count, but I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Devin Booker, 40%. Jay Crowder, 38%. Cameron Johnson, 38%. Chris Paul, 35%, which is better than he's been shooting so far this season. So what we've seen in the NBA is teams that take a lot of these specific shots tend to have a really good offensive rating. The teams that I'm talking about this season so far are the Utah Jazz and the Golden State Warriors. The Suns can do it too. They're already running. And what we've seen in the last few games, in particular this Charlotte game, is Chris Paul getting off the ball immediately. And this is even after a make. He's catching it from out of bounds and throwing it 3/4 of the way up the court to the first available person. And if that three's open, I want them to shoot it more. I like it, and I think it's a good shot. And yes, the rebounder is not always there, but they're making a lot of these, and I think it would help them. What do you think?
Okay. So as an analytic nerd myself, much to the dismay of Eddie and whatever, but everything that you're saying makes sense if you want to boost the Suns' offensive rating. Like literally, if they just start doing that, their offensive rating, which is already good, I haven't checked today. It's what, 10th or something in the NBA, right?
I think it's like 7th, but it's gone down.
Yeah.
In the last few weeks because of the players. Like once Devin Booker went out, that's when it kind of tanked, and now
as you've
DeAndre Ayton out. Yeah.
As you've pointed out before, and will continue to point out 100 times, I'm sure team stats right now kind of suck in some ways because of how stupid the NBA is right now. But, so I'm looking, they're 8th in offensive rating. The Suns are a really, really, really good team. But honestly, they're 2nd in defensive rating, and their defense is carrying them a little bit. Their offense is good. It's 8th. That's really good. But it's not Jazz and Warriors level statistically. So if you start doing what you're talking about there, and by the way, that was great research. I didn't even think to check the early shot clock data like that. I think that's really cool. You will literally boost your offensive rating, I think, by a couple of points. But of course, it all comes down to playoff execution. Right. And so what people are going to come back at with you, and I do sort of agree with this train of thought, is it a viable strategy in the playoffs?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, is what Utah is doing right now to generate 100 million early threes and, hope to get teams in rotation and kill them with good shots in terms of great looking shots like shot quality. They get a ton of corner threes. Those are just about the best possible shot you can generate. So good shots on paper, but then questionable execution with their playoff performance in the past. Is it a viable strategy in the playoffs, or would the Suns fizzle out like a Utah team?
Yeah, that's absolutely a correct criticism of this, because the volatility of a team that relies too much on their three-point shots could lead to games in the playoffs that should be wins turning into losses. But I think this is where the Suns' continuity and their playoff experience last season comes into play. It's that they can do that. They can slow it down. They have one of the best half-court offenses in the NBA. They had essentially the best half-court offense in the playoffs last season of any team. They have the ability of doing that. They don't rely too much on that three-point shot. And I think for them, the key would be the right players shooting in transition. It would be Cameron Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker, Landry Shamet, basically. Those would be the 4 guys that you want shooting threes in transition if the rim is guarded and players are backpedaling. And then beyond that, if that's not available, backing up, running their half-court offense, which they're still really good at so far this season, especially when they're healthy. So I think what they have is the ability to sort of be both. And the teams that can be both are the teams, like the Warriors, who also have a good half-court offense. Those teams that can do both things are the teams that are going to succeed. I think when you look at Utah, you could make the case that they rely too much on threes. And even beyond that, for them, too much pull-up threes in the half court, because that's where teams like Houston ran into trouble in the playoffs in the past. Yep. We'll see what happens this year, of course, because maybe it'll work. Because all it does, it just has to work for 2 months to win an NBA title, and we've seen that before. But yeah, I don't think the Suns would run into that, because I don't think they need to rely on it too much. I think it would just be something that could boost them in games like this, where it turns a game that could, what we've seen in the past is they go up by 20 and then they end up winning by 8. But it turns a game where you're up by 20 into a game where you're up by 42, which is what they went up by in this game against Charlotte. Sure. Because they kept doing it over and over and over and over again. And that's when I would appreciate them using it more.
Yeah, that's how you see those net rating stats from teams like Utah and Golden State. I think it's ambitious. Every team wants to solve this problem. This is a unanimous problem across the league of how do you find the right balance. Because with certain guys, Chris Paul, Devin Booker have done the mid-range thing forever. For them, I think it's like riding a bike. They're never going to forget. So you can push or bestow certain principles upon them and still trust them to make the proper decisions because they're experienced veterans at this point. I'm counting Devin Booker as an experienced veteran just based on
7 years.
How much experience he got seeing those tough defensive coverages last year. In just that one playoff run will do it, honestly. So for them, it's very much like you can push them. You could say, hey, more early shot clock threes, let's really do this. And then when it gets tougher in the playoffs, they can ease back into their old style, and I don't think you're going to lose too much. Where you stand to maybe lose something, and where you have to be careful, and this is where, we've talked about this before, but this is where Houston ultimately ran into trouble during those years when Chris Paul was there too, is pigeonholing role players. And I think the Suns have been very careful at this point to not pigeonhole their role players into just making everyone a 3-and-D guy who chucks up a million threes. But no, we want Cam Johnson to attack closeouts and take mid-range shots, even if it's not statistically the best shot. We want Mikal Bridges to do that. We like Jay Crowder's floater, all that sort of stuff. And so you don't want to take that away from guys. And I think sometimes it's tough in really trying to dictate their decision-making process too much. I think Monty's been very careful about that, and it's been one of his best success stories since he came to Phoenix is establishing a flow, or laying out a series of guidelines for these guys, but then just letting them play through it, right? He's not too authoritarian with like how he forces guys into making certain decisions. He wants to present them with the framework and then sort of just set them loose, and whatever they do is he kind of goes with the flow. So it's tough, but I think it's overall mostly possible. To what extent remains to be seen.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to bring up my second one now because it's relevant to what you just said. In the last 10 games, Cameron Johnson has shot exactly 7 threes a game at 42% from the three-point line. 7 threes a game, to me, should be the baseline of what Cameron Johnson shoots for the rest of the season. It's just what he needs to shoot. With his ability to hit the types of shots that he's hitting, there should not be a 3 that he's turning down at this point. And I know what you said. You don't want to pigeonhole these guys into doing that. He still can attack the closeout, but if the closeout's late, sometimes attacking it is the bad decision. He needs to shoot even when that closeout is just a little bit late, because his ability to be 6'8", for one, and just shoot over guys, and the speed with which he shoots the ball means, to me, there are very few shots that are even slightly open that he should be turning down. And I wanted to have one for him. One, just to say that the 7 threes a game is something that we set on an over-under last year. So it's been a number that's been on my mind for a long time, and he's hit it in the last 10 games. And 2, just to give him some credit for what he's been doing in the last 15 games at this point. I don't know what 16. His streak is at. 16 games?
16 games now. Yep.
It's incredible. He's consistent.
We talked about how incredible it was last week, and then he went out and he dropped another 20 points against Boston. Granted, that was a stinker of a game, but and then he did it again last night. Consistency, like you said.
Just an incredible player, and I would like to see him just continue to shoot every shot that's available to him. I think we're at the point now where I think he's going to be closing more games than he doesn't close because of his ability to hit those shots off movement. And, he's actually a pretty good rebounder, too. He just does everything relatively well, and threes, like, extremely well. Like, one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA this season. So shout out to him. If you have anything else on Cameron Johnson, go ahead. If not, I'd like to hear your other one.
I know you're wary about using this stat, but with Cam Johnson, like, would you believe that Cam Johnson has the third highest VORP on the Suns right now? He's ahead of both Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton for the time being. And with DeAndre Ayton, that doesn't surprise me all that much because VORP it's a cumulative stat. You need to play minutes in order to accrue it.
Right.
So a lot of that is actually his BPM is worse than Ayton's, but he's played more games, so he has a higher VORP. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
But him and Mikal Bridges neither have missed a game, and yet Cam Johnson has a higher VORP than Mikal Bridges.
Right.
Which, again, if this pattern holds, I mean, that points to Cam Johnson's agent, who I actually don't know who he's represented by. I should figure that out.
I think CAA. Yeah, I think he's the same as Booker.
If that holds, Cam Johnson's agent, CAA, if that is who it is, can easily point at that and say, you gave Mikal Bridges $22.5 million a year. Do it for our guy, too. I mean, there's an argument there with how well he's playing. If he averages 15 points per game for the rest of the season, which is, like, possible with the way he's playing right now.
Are you worried about losing him already like I am?
Well, yeah. I mean, if that's a really steep price. If that's what the price tag is. And again, we talked about it last week. Like, I don't give a shit about the luxury tax bill, but I will be honest in telling fans that's probably not going to happen, regardless of if it's Sarver or whoever the next owner is. You should pressure the ownership to pay that, but I don't think they will.
Yeah, I think the Suns are going to be a tax team. And this is something that I think people have rightfully, wondered about with Jalen Smith's option being not picked up for next season if that was tax motivated, because once DeAndre Ayton signs a contract, the Suns are likely going to be in the tax, and if the Suns are in the tax, that's just, do they want to pay Jalen Smith extra to be on the team for somebody who may not get a lot of minutes? Let me ask you one question real quick. Shooting at least 7 threes a game, do you want to guess how many players are shooting 42% or better? And now, this is not technically what Cameron Johnson is doing currently. It's just what I want him to do and what he's done the last 10 games.
How many players in the NBA?
In this season are shooting 7 threes or more and at a higher rate than what Cameron Johnson did in the last 2 games, or at that rate, 42% or higher.
Like 4, maybe? 3?
There's 1.
Okay. Is his name Steph Curry?
His name is Patty Mills.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right,
and
Patty.
The players that are close are number 2, Zach LaVine, who's been amazing, especially as a shooter. This one's surprising. Number 3, Lonzo Ball, both of them shooting 41.9%. Lonzo Ball has become a legit three-point shooter so far this season. Steph Curry shooting 40% so far from 3, but he's shooting an absurd 13.5 attempts per game. And then there's one other player over 40%, that's Fred VanVleet. Everyone else in the NBA shooting 7 3-point attempts or more is under 40% from 3. So Cameron Johnson, if he continues to play the way he's playing, will literally be one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. And it'd be nice to see him do it because I think he's capable of doing it.
I'm not going to argue against that.
What's your last one?
My last one. Do you have any more?
I have one joke one.
Okay, cool.
Kind of
All
a
right,
joke.
I'll go with this then. I'll make it kind of quick, though. Have we seen, or what will it look like, rather, to get Devin Booker's best basketball in the second half of the season? Because I want to preface this one a little bit by noting what are the biggest things that we've already seen so much improvement out of the Suns just to get to this point, right? What are the biggest resolutions, if you will, that we wanted to see coming into the season? 2 of the boxes were checked for sure between Ayton in the short roll, which we've covered extensively. That was one of the biggest things I wanted to see out of anyone on the team, and he's absolutely doing it. And Devin Booker pull-up three-point shooting. I've wanted to see that for years, and he is doing it. The slightly ironic thing about Devin Booker's season, though, is as he has given us by far the best three-point shooting of his career, his two-point shooting, specifically his finishing at the rim, both the frequency and the efficiency are down. And so for the last 3 seasons, Devin Booker shot 54, 55, and then 54% again on all two-pointers. That includes the mid-range shots. Obviously a lot higher right at the rim. This year, he's back down to 47%, a pretty steep drop, closer to where he was when he was just a weaker player, honestly, like back on his rookie contract. Those are around the numbers that he would put up there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a bunch of things that could be potentially going on here, but the general premise being, can we see a half a season from Devin Booker where we get both? We get the best of both worlds. He is attacking the basket with both hands. We know he can finish really, really well with his left hand because he trained to use it a few years ago when he had a wrist injury or a hand injury. I actually forget which one it was now. But can we see a half of a season from Devin Booker where he is equally gifted at finishing at the rim and at hitting 40+% of his threes? What does that look like? It probably looks like, in my opinion, like a Devin Booker who could give you 28 to 30 points per game on absurd efficiency and make a run for sure. I mean, he's already making a run at it, but like for sure cement himself as first team All-NBA at that point.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, it's, I just want to reiterate something you're saying. For as good as he's been shooting the ball, his true shooting percentage this season is essentially 4th or 5th best of his career, which is kind of odd because I have very little complaints about what we've seen from him. And a lot of the advanced stats, if you put any weight in those, are saying that he's essentially having his best season so far, outside of true shooting. So it is kind of odd that for how good he's been at shooting behind the three-point line, it hasn't translated into his true shooting percentage, his overall efficiency as far as each shot he takes. There's two reasons for that, exactly what you brought up with his finishing at the rim. And then, free throw attempts are down. So with his free throw attempts down, that affects his overall true shooting percentage so far this season as well. So I think those are the two main culprits there. And, last season, essentially 6 free throw attempts per game. This season, 4.3. So, that's a combination probably of the rules changing and him, shifting to shooting more shots behind the three-point line, which are just fouled less as well. So that's a big thing. I think if he can get that free throw attempt rate up, that'll help his overall efficiency. But that will mean attacking the basket and attacking even more in transition, which maybe is antithetical to what I just said, which is shooting more threes in transition. But I actually, if I had to weight one of those over the other, I would prefer the threes still, because as you get into the playoffs, those types of fouls are just called less anyway. So it just depends on the situation.
I just want to throw out one split stat that I found in researching this one, which I thought was kind of interesting. Last year, Booker the Suns were a better team when both Chris Paul and Devin Booker played. They were still a good team when just Devin Booker played. But like the net ratings of the team were better. But Devin Booker's individual stats, he was roughly equally efficient whether or not Chris Paul was on the floor. This was last year. This year's been a totally different story, and I think it's been interesting to look at so far. Again, the Suns are fine when it's just Devin Booker on the floor and no Chris Paul. Their net rating is at the positive and by a decent amount. But it's a difference between, Mike, last year Booker had a 61% true shooting when Chris Paul was off the floor. This year, do you want to guess what it is?
I'm guessing lower. I am not sure, though.
49.5% true shooting.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
That's bad. I mean, that's bad. Technically, it's bad efficiency. And, I think maybe where do you start with that, right? Yeah. Obviously, DeAndre Ayton is logging a lot of minutes with all three of them together. So where you can maybe start with that is the difference between Dario Saric and JaVale McGee.
Spacing.
Right. It's just basically a spacing argument. With Saric last year, his combination of playmaking, being able to slip the screens and then playmake, plus being a 5-out spacer, meant that Booker could get to the rim more easily. I mean, that's sort of the theory we had about campaign 2, right? But then the stats didn't always exactly back that up. But so maybe that's what's happening here. But regardless, is it just a cold spell that has now lasted almost half a season for Booker? Or is there something that these other guys in the second unit, when they play with Booker, can do to better relieve him and take some pressure off him when they share the floor together? That's something I think we should be watching closer for.
Yeah, that's really interesting because we've speculated specifically about Cameron Payne and the effect that JaVale McGee has had on his specifically his finishing at the rim, because the spacing is not quite there the same. Dario Saric, even though he wasn't a great three-point shooter last year, he still needed to be guarded at the three-point line last year, so that left some more space. And I imagine something similar is happening with Devin Booker. But yeah, maybe we'll have to dig in a little bit more to that. I do think with Devin Booker, like when we're looking at the overall stats for the entire season, he was so inefficient coming off COVID to start the season. I think that had a pretty big effect on his overall efficiency. But even like the last 10 games, he's still at, according to this, let me bring it up. Last 10 games, 55% true shooting percentage. So it's not, he's been over 60 in his career before. And over 60 is kind of a great line to really differentiate a really great shooter and like a good one, like a more of a volume scorer. So to get him higher there would be a big help. But the finishing at the rim is something that I'm going to have to pay more attention to now that you've brought it up, because I'm definitely interested in seeing if we're able to notice something different besides just the obvious with Dario Saric being out.
Yep.
All right, that's a fascinating one. Anything else you got?
Those are all my resolutions. Give me your joke one.
My last one, the thing that would make this year great, really great, besides a championship, is Robert Sarver selling the Phoenix Suns.
Sure.
Because it's something that could actually happen this year. We don't talk about it all the time because we don't have a lot to it. But there's a possibility that he'll be forced to sell the Suns sometime this year. And that would be great. That'd be a great year.
Yeah, I was expecting this to be more ridiculous than that. I will take this one seriously because it could totally happen.
Yeah.
Right?
So that would be great. That would be great. And that's the last one I got. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back with a Patreon episode midweek. If you want to join the Patreon, patreon.com/thetimeline.
House cleaning.
Then, yes.
Were you going to bring this up?
No, go ahead.
So the contract is still running with Playback. We told you guys, for those of you who are patrons and have been on our Playback streams, last time we weren't sure of when the next one we could do was. But now we know the contract will be running for at least a couple more months. So what does that mean? We are in the process of selecting dates for January. We have 4 tentative dates picked out. We will let you know when it's all finalized. But so the Playback streams, for those of you who are interested in those, the live watch parties, they will be continuing through January. We anticipate as soon as these get finalized that we'll have at least 4 more games that we'll be doing in January. So again, about 1 a week to make available for you guys.
The first
Mostly
one as early as this weekend.
As early as this weekend, the first tentative date, and again, we just need finalization, but the first tentative date will be this Saturday night against Miami, which should hopefully be a good game. 2 good teams.
Yeah. And I imagine we'll have some Suns players back by then. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We will be back very soon.